The other day, a song that I love, Maggie Rogers' song Light On, came on the radio while I was driving. Now, this is a song I've listened to dozens and dozens of times, and it does something for me that no other song does. It captures how surprisingly melancholy the other side of your dreams can be. One of her lyrics is, "Everyone around me saying, you must be so happy now." As I listened, I had this curious thought, which was, there was a time before this song existed. It didn't exist until Maggie Rogers wrote it. It wasn't a thing in the world. Yes, I am stating the obvious, but it made me wonder, what works of art are people currently working to create that will mean something to listeners, readers, or viewers in 2025 or 2030 or 2099? And what imposter syndrome are those creators facing right now? What forces of resistance are rearing up for them? Because those works of art don't exist yet. And unless the creators keep going, they will never exist. There are so many of us out here waging silent battles against our own self-doubt and distraction to produce the next Maggie Rogers Light On, or the next poem or novel that another person won't want to end, or the next essay that someone will read and be brought to tears by. Okay, here's a story that I also uncovered recently. This is true. A little boy named Robert grew up in upstate New York in the early 1900s. He was smaller than his classmates because he skipped a couple of grades, and so he was self-conscious about not fitting in. After he graduated high school, he went to Dartmouth, where he majored in psychology. And then he was going to be a novelist. That was his dream. He got a job writing marketing copy for Macy's in the meantime. And eventually he became a copywriter for the store Montgomery Ward. Doesn't exist anymore, I don't think. In the meantime, he married and he had a daughter. Each year at Christmas, Montgomery Ward would give out coloring books. And in 1939, the store decided to create their own coloring book. And this guy, Robert May, was assigned the task of writing the story for the coloring book to be handed out that season. When he got this assignment, it was early 1939, and he was in a dark place. He was 35, he was heavily in debt, he'd never written that novel that he had dreamed of. He was still writing marketing copy. As he put it, "Instead of writing the great American novel as I'd once hoped, I was describing men's white shirts." He described going to work in Chicago, where he lived, on a frigid January day and feeling relieved that holiday decorations by Montgomery Ward had been taken down. His wife was suffering from a long illness. He wasn't feeling festive. And meanwhile, Robert May, who was Jewish and did not celebrate Christmas himself, looked around for inspiration. Images of Santa's reindeer were everywhere still. And Santa's reindeer, by the way, already had the names Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, Vixen, Comet, Cupid, Donner, and Blitzen. And his little daughter, whose name was Barbara, loved these reindeer. One day, on this cold January, he thought, what if he wrote about a ninth reindeer? And he made that reindeer into a misfit. So one afternoon, peering through his office window at the fog over Lake Michigan, he tried to imagine Santa navigating it. And Rudolph's red nose was born. In the summer of that year, his wife passed away. His employer offered to transfer the assignment of finishing up this coloring book for the following Christmas to someone else, but Robert wanted to finish it. And he did that August of 1939. That year, the coloring book was distributed to several million children. And even though it was beloved, a few years later, the store was so convinced that it was just a little pamphlet, nothing with massive commercial potential, that it gave Robert May rights to the poem that he had written for that coloring book. And 83 years later, this past Christmas in Nashville, Tennessee, my 4-year-old asked to listen to Rudolph every day of December. He loves that reindeer and he loves the song. He cares about him. He doesn't want Rudolph's bright red nose to be hidden. He gets excited when Rudolph is recruited to lead Santa's sleigh. He derived more joy from that poem than anything else about Christmas last year, except for presents, of course. The origin of creativity is so often not ease. It's not noble or remarkable. There aren't people waiting with bated breath for your story or your poem or your song. It's an idea that comes while you're in the midst of grief or sorrow. It's an inkling inspired by a task that was never more than a means to pay the bills. There's not fanfare or a parade when you do it. But that doesn't mean that 100 years later, the words you scribble on a legal pad could bring joy to a child on the other side of the world. And maybe one day someone will think, wow, there was a time before this existed. I'm so glad that person persevered and wrote it. So keep going. Don't deprive the world of what creative ideas invite you to partner with them. Speaking of writing, are you writing a book or do you want to write a book? Because if so, I would love to hear from you. When I'm not writing, my mission is to help writers write their dream books. And if you're curious to know more, I have a free video walking you through my 4 notebooks method for writing a novel. You can get it and my free template for using the 4 notebooks method by applying for my program, the Book Incubator, a 12-month MFA alternative. The application is just 2 questions. It'll take you under 5 minutes. I just ask you to tell me a little bit about you and your book idea. Go to thebookincubator.com or the link below. I hope to hear from you.